everybody. I'm Logan Crawford, and this is the award-winning TV talk show right here on Ebru Fresh Outlook. Hundreds of journalists around the world locked up. Their offenses? Doing their jobs, reporting the facts, and interpreting events. By the end of 2014, the Committee to Protect Journalists identified 221 reporters in prison across the world, the second highest number since the organization began keeping track back in 1990. China and Iran are among the worst offenders, holding a third of all journalists jailed globally. Take a look.
Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble. That's a portion of the First Amendment as to how freedom of speech is defined in the United States. Well, sort of. While on the surface, the First Amendment may appear to be a licensed carte blanche, numerous gray areas exist which continue to be argued. Some of those gray areas heard by the courts include public forum regulation, inciting, provocative or offensive speech, prior restraint, expressive conduct, commercial speech, defamation, and privacy. In the United States, the Telecommunications Act of 1996 led to a drastic reduction of ownership diversity of the mainstream media. The remaining outlets are increasingly criticized as being transformed from the legendary Fourth Estate to a propaganda tool for their corporate owners. Yet, in the U.S., a rogue reporter fears at most the loss of his job. Overseas, it is often more serious. Recently, in Turkey, reporters investigating a purported corruption scandal within the government found themselves in jail, their media outlets raided, and heavy reprisals from the government. Last December, the U.S.-based Committee to Protect Journalists listed Turkey as being in the world's top 10 worst countries for jailing journalists. In Hungary, Prime Minister Orbán's new media law dictates 229 pages of restrictions on free expression and politicized means of enforcing those limits. As countries like Serbia ascend the road to EU membership, free press issues are raised. Back here in the United States, keep in mind, one only needs to look at ag-gag laws for a reminder that free speech is not necessarily carte blanche.
And we are back live on set here at Fresh Outlook. I am joined by the Ebru think tank Mustafa Tabanli, an international journalist, John Drew of Adelphi University, and Yohuru Williams of Fairfield University. John, I'm going to begin with you because you said you had some breaking news to tell us about, which is a crackdown on websites in the East. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, in fact, it's a little bit more complicated. It's a internet company, or I should say social network, that provides access to programmers, essentially, a platform that allows them to share code. And in recent months, or I should say in recent times, it's increasingly being used as a place to also share information that repressive regimes are wanting to censor.
Such as news from the New York Times.
Well, in this particular case, right now, one of the Chinese version of the New York Times is hosted on this platform, and the platform itself, GitHub, is being attacked in a denial of service attack.
And when people go to access this website to read some headlines from the New York Times, to get some information, to find out what's happening in their world, to navigate it better, they're getting what? Access denied? This website is down?
Yeah, right now the website is down. GitHub is down. And that's because they're experiencing a very sophisticated form of cyber hacking.
And speculation is that's being perpetrated by the Chinese government.
Yes, to be clear, right now it's still too early to point fingers, but cybersecurity experts are suggesting that the level of sophistication is so high that it would have to be organized by a country with the type of technological sophistication that Chinese administration has.
Let's talk a little bit about another country that straddles the East and Europe as well, Turkey. And you're very familiar with the type of crackdowns that have taken place over the last year and beyond, primarily sparked by a corruption scandal involving the Prime Minister Erdogan. Tell me about that, Mustafa.
Well, after the corruption scandal, people who are digging dirt on government started to crack down and being arrested for ridiculous reasons, and when they get acquitted, they form a special court that has a jurisdiction over the whole country and you can pinpoint one case to that particular court, and you just need one favorable judge or pro-government judge to get all the prosecutions you need by channeling those corruption investigative journalists.
In this country, we call that a kangaroo court, that basically the court has wide discretion, that justice isn't served. And in some cases in Turkey, journalists are being jailed over simple tweets, such as, take a look at this judge. He is involved in a corruption scandal.
Yes, and it's worse. I mean, like there is a CEO of a media group is jailed because of a drama series about some terrorist organization and patriotic army who is going after them, kind of drama series. But
so here you have a creative work of art, a drama series portraying a topic that is unpalatable to the Erdogan regime, and those people are being jailed.
Yes, because that group is now also doing news on corruption scandals. So they have nothing to do, but the same media group has a news outlet. Because of this news outlet, you go and punish the drama series in a retaliation, but also to show that I can do that. So just everybody beware, I can do whole kind of deals. So that's a kind of message the illiberal democrats, authoritarian regimes all around the world gives. So if you do that, I have tools, I can go
and the fear and the fright and the crackdown spreads rapidly among the people who are trying to tell the truth. Yohuru Williams actually talked to the editor-in-chief of the Daily Zaman recently. Tell me what his thoughts about the situation are that are happening in Turkey right now.
It was very interesting for me because essentially what he documented exactly what you were talking about, the situation where here's the Daily Zaman attempting to provide information on a corruption scandal there, and the Erdogan administration using that as an opportunity to crack down and create a chilling effect among the press. And what that does is ends up suppressing access to information. So going back to the 1960s, when the press was first freed up in Turkey, often what you would find were these coalitions between the press and forces that were working within juntas or within the government. The free press now has allowed them to be very critical of the government itself. And in response to that, you have the Erdogan administration saying, we've got to prevent that from happening. And what we saw in December was an attempt to do that and create this chilling effect among the press.
And of course, I said the Daily Zaman, it's actually today's Zaman that you spoke to the editor-in-chief of. Is it having a chilling effect? Is he able to do his job? What did he tell you during the interview? Is he fearful of being arrested? Has he been arrested?
He was arrested, only detained for a couple of days, but the problem is that there are other journalists who remain incarcerated on charges of being associated with known terrorist organizations. And this has become part of the playbook that we find across the globe, where when you want to go after a press organization that is critical, you try to tie that to some form of state-sponsored or some form of terrorism, which the state has an obligation then to root out or to stamp out. It's clearly unfounded in the case of what was happening in Turkey. In all instances, and most of those people should be exonerated, and yet there's still several who are still in jail as a result.
And it seems like these broad terrorism laws we see even in this country are used to persecute and prosecute political enemies, and it seems like that's what's happening in Turkey. Tell me what your friends are telling you in Turkey. Has the climate changed? I remember when I first started anchoring the newscast here at Ebru, we were on the cusp of joining the European Union, at least Turkey was. And now it seems like the country's gone 180 degrees when it comes to democratic reforms.
And now the main problem is not the lack of criticism, because there are opposition parties. On any illiberal democracy, you have opposition, and they raise their opinions, and you can criticize the government in Turkey. But
so still today you feel you can criticize the government openly.
Yes.
So I can send out a tweet and say Erdogan is a scoundrel and there will be no repercussions.
That particular case, it will be, because he is the head of state. So, I mean, if you exclude Erdogan, you can do that for anybody else.
Okay, so everybody's created equal in Turkey except the prime minister.
And also, it's difficult to access information. There are some cases where military bombed some regular folks doing nothing, and that case is under court, and now they put a gag order. And now there's another case where there is a mix-up in the intelligence community, they put a gag order. So, and then there is a corruption, they say that it's in the court process right now, gag order. So you cannot access information, you cannot reach truth. So that's the main problem on press. You cannot find accurate information because there is always those kind of laws and gag orders. You just can't. So they let you criticize.
Once you have a judicial system that's answering directly to the president, and the president's pulling the strings and trying to smite enemies,
yes,
you don't have democracy anymore.
But that's a trend. So this is illiberal democracy is a trend. So you allow opposition to exist, but you restrict access to the information about the corruption cases, budget and military interventions or due process, etc. When you restrict that access, basically the press is no longer free, even if you can criticize.
Absolutely. John, part of this, and I'll let you pick up on that, Yohuru, in just a second, one of the positives that will come out of the type of age we live in today is so many people have one of these. They can tweet, they can blog, they can post something on Facebook. So new age media and digital media is helping get word out, helping get the story out in a number of ways. Talk to me about that.
Absolutely. I mean, that can't be underestimated. But I think what we have to also equally acknowledge, especially with, for example, what's happening today, is that with all the new data points that are out there, repressive administrations and regular administrations are becoming more sophisticated and learning how to harness that data and surveil that data, which means those that are presenting information that might cast a particular politician or someone in power in negative light are potentially in a position to be hyper-surveilled because of, for example, their Twitter account or their Facebook account. And that means this story is going to continue to unfold. The technology is powerful, and it gives, again, everyday citizens the ability to report from the streets. But at the same time, and unfortunately, administrations are getting savvy to this, there's more opportunity to follow those citizens.
Follow those people, and also there's a fear of pulling the plug and your tweets will disappear. Yohuru, a lot of this is resonating with you. Tell me what you're thinking about right now.
Well, I just think it's important when you look at it in the context of what happened with the Ebru-TV in Zaman in particular, because what they were saying ultimately is that Turkey's in the space where it's really an emerging democracy. What's going to happen at this point, and what you see when you have this chilling effect on the press, is an eroding of the fundamental principles associated with democracy. In the United States, though, this is common for emerging democracies. In the United States, early on, we had the Alien and Sedition Acts, which in a lot of ways were a check on free press. The Espionage Act during World War I, which has been used more by the Bush and Obama administrations than any previous
administrations. And now the Patriot Act as well. I
Correct.
just want to get quickly to this letter written by U.S. senators. Tell me about that a little bit, Mustafa.
Yeah, I interviewed several senators, and they wrote a letter to John Kerry and to
Secretary of State of the United States.
Secretary of State John Kerry to address the media crackdown in Turkey and let the democracy flourish. And which is peculiar because there are some countries that has worse press freedom in terms of, and United States still engages with them and cooperates with them. But that goes back to Turkey. Turkey made some promises. Turkey made an ally. You have to
and
put
a NATO member.
NATO member.
Yeah.
So you put a lot of things, and you said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to open up the society. I'm going to establish democracy and free press. Let's collaborate on that. Now you are backing up that promise. That's going to raise the flag. And I think it was a right move by the senators, and I think it puts sufficient pressure on Erdogan to follow up his promises to the free world and to Turkish people.
Thanks very much for your thoughts and comments. When we come back, we are going to have more on this conversation, gagging the press. This time we're going to focus on what's happening here in the United States after this.